This is an Audio Wool original.
This episode of Frightday is brought to you by Spring Heel Jack Coffee. You need great. Jack delivers. And by me, Ken Beagle, and my new show, The Mind Summit. Do you have goals? Do you have dreams? If the answer is yes to one or both of these questions, the Kent Beagle Mind Summit is for you. Find it right here on the Audio Wool Network.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you'd like to support us, go to patreon.com/frightday.
Hey guys, which part of the stories are you most excited to hear about tonight? Are you most excited to hear about the mutilations, or the portals, or the UFOs, or the crop circles, or the men in black, or the orbs, or the dreams, or the poltergeists?
I'm super excited to put on spa music on YouTube next to my head and then go softly to sleep and just have
lest you
COVID
forget,
nightmares all night.
I'm the one that taught you about the joy of spa music.
Oh, I thought you said ska.
Oh, no way, dude. I'd be skanking in my sleep. There would be no rest.
Ska.
I thought you said ska.
Posh.
It is Frightday. I'm your host, Byron. Growing up can be a lonely time. Failing to fit in can leave you desperate for companionship and can lead to more innovative alternatives. But sometimes playmate creativity can leave your loved ones terrified. Tonight, we're talking bad imaginary friend selection as we review Brandon Christensen's Z, and last week we pressed pause right as things were heating up, but this report is worth the wait? Did you write this?
I mean, no.
It's Return to Skinwalker Ranch Part 3, the George Knapp perspective, continued in this week's edition of Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies. I'm joined tonight by Kelly.
Hello.
And Sam.
Hey, guys.
So, have you guys been working out a plan to eat your neighbors yet, or
No,
is that just?
I mean, like, I'm not sure what you like. That's the plan, so I don't really know what you're.
No, I like our neighbors.
But did you hear what Alex Jones is planning?
Oh, is he dying yet? He's
No,
supposed
no.
to be dying.
Could
Could he be dying before he cannibalizes somebody?
I'll admit it. I will eat my neighbors. I'm not letting my kids die. I'm just going to be honest. My superpower is being honest. I've extrapolated this out, and I won't have to for a few years since I got food and stuff. But I'm literally looking at my neighbors now and going, I'm ready to hang them up and gut them and skin them and chop them up. And you know what? I'm ready. My daughters aren't starving to death. I'll eat my neighbors.
He will eat his neighbors if this thing goes on any longer. We're at week 7 now, and he's already talking about stringing up his neighbors, saying he will eat their ass.
So weird.
Well, I mean, that's what vultures do. I mean, that's the soft part. It kind of expands outward, kind of prolapses as the corpse decays, so it's easy to access for scavengers. So it actually makes sense.
I'm ready to hang them up and gut them and skin them and chop them up. And you know what? I'm ready. I'll eat my neighbors. I'll eat your butt.
You think I like sizing up my neighbor, how I'm going to haul him up by a chain and chop his ass up? I'll do it. My children aren't going hungry. I will eat your ass.
Oh, it's not even 11s and I'm starving, so
Okay, so
you know,
like, isn't that cause to get like a restraining order?
I mean,
For all of his?
he honestly, he did go on to say that it was all satire and he was kidding. I mean, and he is an entertainer legally. Remember, in court, they had to present the fact that he was a character
during his custody battle.
But, I mean,
and why is he a character?
I don't know. This whole thing
To
is...
be a character, don't you have to prove that there's something separate about your real persona?
Also, I assume that everyone remotely connected to him in a personal way, either by proximity to his property or, you know, familiar relationship, probably already has a restraining order on him anyway, so...
Yeah.
Oh, man. What a sad character.
Yeah. I wish that he would just get killed by somebody.
Okay.
Like, has any... I mean, I'm sure this has happened, and there's probably a reason it doesn't work, but I don't know, if somebody was with more time and energy than I have, catfished him on 4chan, and we had like the next Pizzagate was Alex Basement Gate, and you had like nuts with guns going there to free the child sex slaves.
That is the best way to do it. That's definitely. Did you see that Michigan has the highest death rate?
Okay, so
and that's where the fucking crazy people are protesting.
Before we get too terribly political, what you guys been up to? I mean,
fuck consensus.
Kelly, you and I had a fun couple hours.
I'm not very good at that game.
Our first Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Frightday. I mean, you would have been okay at it if you were paying attention at all, but you were distracted by so many things. The comments but from the listeners or viewers in that case. Also, we were trying to work out what we're going to do for Moon June coming up. We were juggling a lot, but I think it was a lot of fun, and I appreciate everyone who showed up, and I think that that's something that we're going to try to do more often.
Yeah, Frightday is going to get into the esports arena.
I mean...
I said that with a straight face. I said esports.
Maybe I'll be better at that than regular sports.
I mean... You did destroy me in Halo when we were in high school. Yeah, so.
That's where actually, ironically, that's kind of where it began with Sam, too. Didn't I come over and play video games with you, too? While you yelled at me and told me how stupid my politics were?
Man, Kelly's a secret gamer, huh?
I really am just like a button pusher. I just go...
Well, maybe that's why you... I mean... When all
push
this
buttons?
I'm sorry. The fingers you have used to play are too uncoordinated. Please mash the remote with your hand now.
It's really good, though. I'm good at it.
We'll just play Tekken. I mean, at some point, when quarantine is lifted and we're not in fear for our lives, I can't wait to play some real horror video games in person. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of streaming, I thinking about using Twitch or Discord since I don't know what the status is with Dark Matter Digital Radio at this point. Things are...
Well, it's owned by people that apparently are trying to...
Wait, yeah, let's not say anything quite yet. But we are going to start premiering our episodes on either YouTube or Discord so everyone can kind of listen for the first time all at once and they can chat in the comments.
Oh, yeah, I didn't give Sam that news today because I forgot we talked about that when I was on my walkabout.
Yeah, and then after the episode premieres, it'll go onto the podcast feed. So I think that's going to be an interesting way for us to all kind of relive those fun, live radio kinds of things as live as we should be.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
I've been trying to get us on YouTube for a long time. I knew there was some way to do it. I just didn't really understand it.
Well, you can't just get on YouTube.
I figured it out.
And you know what? One of the reasons I've been pushing for it, Byron, is so many times when I'm doing research and I'm trying to find a podcast episode or an interview to listen to, half the time it's a YouTube video.
Look at that.
Yeah.
We might just find a new audience there. I have been part of an audience for something for the past 2 weeks, and I anticipate this will be my regular habit. The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs is back, and it is so good. I didn't think they could get better than last season. And playing one of my favorite movies this week is, well, that doesn't hurt either. They kicked off with the 1980 classic Maniac.
Oh, you love that one.
You can lock your doors, but you can't lock the madman out of your mind. Maniac. No one under 17 admitted.
I just love this film so much.
It's
I know
good.
you do.
A psychotic man troubled by his childhood abuse, loose in New York City, and we're talking the gritty New York City, late 70s, kills young women and takes their scalps as his trophies. Will he find the perfect woman in a photographer and end his killing spree? I'm not going to spoil that, but I have a feeling you already know. This is one of my favorite serial killer films of all time, tied closely with Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. This time through, I learned so much from Joe Bob Briggs and his special guest, which just such a treat. Last week he had Chris Jericho, and I talked a little bit about that, but I forgot to mention that I love Chris Jericho. Because,
you forgot to mention that.
Well, he is the narrator, and he was an active participant in the first episode of the second season of a show on Vice called Dark Side of the Ring, which is... It's a show that focuses...
You need a stringboard for that connection, Byron.
But the show focuses on dark events in wrestling, like the Chris Benoit situation.
I run the security for World Wrestling, and one of our wrestlers that lives down there is missing.
Okay, what's his name?
Chris Benoit.
The father killed his wife and son and then committed suicide.
Why did this happen? How did it happen?
If you're going to say I'm glorifying a murder, stop listening now.
The secret was out of the bag. People want to know what really goes on behind the scene.
Wrestling was a brotherhood. It was like being in the mafia.
Someone doesn't just fall from the top of an arena. Something went wrong.
And there's a woman who yells to Stuka, "You goddamn murderer."
I stuck him like 9 times. I counted, it was 9.
There's nothing fake about guys breaking their bodies down.
The tails get taller and taller and bigger and better.
This is not something that does the public image of professional wrestling a world of good.
One time, a producer decided to see who the actual toughest wrestler was. There was an episode about this fight where they had like a boxing match between all of the wrestlers, and it ruined the career of so many of them because they actually got physically hurt. I mean, there's so many great episodes of this show, but Chris Jericho's the narrator of that. Backing up, he was a guest on Joe Bob Briggs last week for Bloodsucking Freaks, and here we are this week, the guest, Tom Savini.
Oh, awesome.
Makeup effects artist. He worked on Dawn of the Dead.
Okay, I was waiting for you guys to tell me who he was so that I didn't have to sound stupid.
I mean, he is horror special effects.
Yeah.
If it's good, he either did it or inspired whoever did.
Friday the 13th, Creep Show, so much more. Almost equally important was his role as Sex Machine in the film From Dusk Till Dawn.
Cannot find that belt buckle anywhere, and I've been looking for almost 2 decades.
It doesn't seem like it would work very well to have a
nope,
a penis gun with 2 chambers,
Yeah,
6
it
shooters
really,
around. I don't see how
the
bullet-
Veritas of that movie kind of falls apart with that, but it's still entertaining.
It very much is, and so was their conversation. Joe Bob and Tom Savini did such a great job, and Joe Bob asked him a question that I don't think he's ever been asked before, and it was really interesting. He brought up Tom Savini's time as a photographer during the Vietnam War.
Ooh,
I did not.
Grim.
It was grim, but it was also interesting because it inspired so much of Tom Savini's work to actually have seen the result of horrific
Ripped apart bodies,
bodily harm.
dead people,
Yeah.
blood,
Yes. Very
entrails.
much. I don't think they went that deep into it, but yeah, Maniac. This was, I think, probably one of my favorite watches. Jamie and I sat on the bed watching Frank Zito murder people. You know, Frank Zito played by Joe Spinell, and Joe Spinell is one of the best character actors. He died far too early.
What did he die of?
Well, Joe Bob goes into it, so I recommend you go to Shudder and
Well, no, tell me.
So he was a hemophiliac, and he was a drug addict and alcoholic.
It's a bad combo, especially
and
if it's like a pokey drug.
He went home and slipped in the tub and hit his head, and they think he may have bled out or had a heart attack or died of the alcohol or drugs. So
Scheisse.
Just
That's
a lot of bad things happened to him. He's also in Taxi Driver, Rocky, so many things. He's a great character actor, horrifying and disgusting in this film. I loved it. We sat on the bed and ate pizza and French fries and watched Maniac, and then got tired as Heathers came on as the second feature.
Heather Chandler, Heather McNamara, Heather Duke, Veronica Sawyer.
Why are you such a mega brat? Because I can be.
The most powerful clique at Westerberg.
God, Veronica. Drool much?
Most people would die to get into it.
Heather #1 just looked right at me.
I'm worshipped Westerberg, and I'm only a junior.
Veronica would kill to get out of it.
You were nothing before you met me. You were a Girl Scout cookie.
JD has come to answer her prayers.
I'm a no-rust build-up man myself.
We'll kill her.
A film I have never seen.
I was just going to say, I haven't either.
Isn't that weird? Like,
It is weird.
It seems like something that everyone has seen, some sort of hip cult classic.
I don't think that I've ever heard it referenced by someone whose opinion I did not respect, like in positive ways.
What's the premise? I don't even know the premise. I just know Christian Slater.
In order to get out of the snobby clique that is destroying her good girl reputation, an intelligent teen teams up with a dark sociopath in a plot to kill the cool kids. It's the 3 Heathers. One of the Heathers is played by a young Shannon Doherty in 1989. JD is that young sociopath played by Christian Slater. And Veronica is great friends with the Heathers. It's Winona Ryder. So
who are the other 2 Heathers?
Lisa Ann Falk and Kim Walker. So I don't know them. but
I recognize those names, but yeah, I'm with you. I don't really know who they are either. Okay.
the script is so tightly written. It's really, really interesting, and it's darker than I would have expected. I'm glad Joe Bob brought it to the table. It's not really a me film, but I was happy that I watched part of it before falling asleep, which is, I think, my tradition with The Last Drive-In. I make it about a quarter to a third of the way through the second feature and then fall asleep on a Friday night.
Oh, it's so late. It's so late when you're old.
You know, it's fun though to watch live TV and to not be able to pause it. There's some sort of like a baby being rocked to sleep when you can't stop the TV. It's something about it's still going without you, so you don't need to have that existential dread of the world ending. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Byron, you know I've been trying to get through the most recent season of Mr. Robot so that we can talk about that.
Yeah,
and then I'm going to be
please.
really sad and missing Christian Slater, so we should... Then I'll watch Heather's.
Finish up Mr. Robot, and we're going to do a behind the screens on the whole series because I think it's worth it. I love that show.
I'm going to need like 12 hours to talk about that show. It's
maybe-
almost as enthralling to me as Twin Peaks.
Maybe we'll do it as a Twitch stream, and everyone can kind of join in with their opinions on Mr. Robot. We'll go season by season. It'll be a lot of fun.
Woohoo!
But what have you guys been up to?
Kelly's been making a lot of bread.
Still bread, huh? Are you branching out?
I made really good lemon bars.
Lemon bars. You know that's my favorite dessert, right?
No, really? Okay,
Big
because these are
fan.
fucking good.
I love a good citrus curd on top of a shortbread crust.
Yum. Oh, Kelly made me help with her garden in spite of my...
Oh, God.
I've sworn probably 4 or 5 times in our relationship that I was never going to help with another of Kelly's gardens. I mean, I don't like vegetables. I don't like work.
You also don't want her to inadvertently dig up something that...
Exactly. I mean, as long as... Yeah. Anyway, finally, I just got tired of Kelly telling me that I had to help her with her garden, so I went out and helped her with her garden.
Very nice.
And cut the cable line. Yeah.
She did call me in a panic after that.
That was right before my interview with Issa.
A weekend endeavor, getting that repaired. But,
This weird cable repair guy came out and had a lot of strange stories to tell us.
Well, we're up and running. We got the internet.
I mean, that's all you really need, that and food, water, shelter, and space. And I've been learning that by watching Naked and Afraid constantly. This quarantine is getting to me.
I hate Naked and Afraid.
It's fine. It's just, you know what? Why do they gotta be naked?
The human body is something to be ashamed of, covered up. I mean, there should basically be nothing but shame associated with that. It shouldn't be glorified.
Yeah, well, you know.
Sam's my executive producer for whatever show we do next.
Well, that's terrible.
The news, I mean, like, yes, I think everyone in the world, like, the news has been horror. But, I mean, come on. The Asian giant hornets, that's actual horror. And it's the best horror. It's 1970s environmental horror. And that is so fantastic. Like, that is great. This is good news.
I don't know anything about these.
Oh, my friend.
And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, an invasive and potentially deadly hornet has been found in the U.S. for the very first time. Asian giant hornets, nicknamed murder hornets, have a venomous sting that can kill someone if they're stung several times. They're even strong enough to puncture a beekeeper's suit.
So I've been sounding the alarm on these for like 10 years. And by the alarm, I mean just telling everyone how these are the coolest animals that are animals.
Okay.
They're hornets from Asia, like Japan, I think, like mainland China, I think as well. They can be up to 2 inches long. They're extremely aggressive. They have a pretty potent neurotoxin, and their stingers are large enough to penetrate clothing and traditional beekeeping suits.
Oh, God, man.
So they're super unpleasant things, but also eat honeybees. But the way they eat honeybees, a few of them will go into a bee hive and spend an hour or two decapitating them, like tearing their head, just tearing their heads off.
God.
Yeah, and then they carry the rest of the bees. Sometimes they carry the rest of the bees back to the queen for food, so they can wipe out an entire hive of bees in just a few hours. So we don't have enough bees right now as it is.
Yeah,
and
we're running out.
pollinators generally.
And with this 5G
Everybody
tower
raise
stuff.
bees. Everyone raise bees. Kill those hornets.
Yeah, so these are terrible. I mean, I kind of fell in love with them. There was a video that I don't know if it was ever actually authenticated, but it was Korea, Japan. It was sourced other places, but anyway, it's a military with a flamethrower torching one of their huge nests up in the trees.
Sure.
'Cause that's like the only way you can do it. But they have been spotted now in the last couple days in Washington, which is very exciting from an end of the world standpoint.
Oh my God. And
Okay, remember how Washington was where COVID started around these parts
well,
too?
it didn't really start there. It kicked off pretty hot in a nursing home. But
I mean, that's where like most of the, at least at that point, known initial cases were.
God, and I'm sorry, the honeybee thing really hits me hard though. I mean, hive invasion as a genre, I don't. That's scary. That's
these are like legit. They're from horror. They are awful, and I mean they're like the size of your pinky, literally. It's vile. It's just disgusting. And I mean, so they're like these giant hornets trying to destroy civilization. Like they're from Japan, so I feel like we have done ourselves a great disservice, and we will pay the price for our hubris of driving Godzilla away because we need him now.
And the thing is, like, Washington State, how do you get there? Do you think they went through something like a portal?
Yeah, portals. You know where else there are portals?
In this week's edition of Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies.
I was going to say Rick and Morty.
Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies.
Irregular, but wildly varying.
So, getting into my story for tonight.
Oh, okay.
Really cool thing about researching George Knapp and Skinwalker Ranch is most of the information that is really robust and not redundant is recent because he has, as we talked about last week, just recently been relieved of his promise to not talk about what he saw at the ranch and what he interviewed people who had seen at the ranch. And so now he's doing a lot of interviews about it, and he's writing some pieces himself about it. And I have no doubt that in the coming year or so, especially with this new History Channel show, that we're going to hear more from Mr. Knapp about things that happened. Now, we aren't going to go into the history show tonight, but it's important to know George Knapp really does serve as the bridge between Bigelow and Fugel. He's been allowed on site under both research teams. You know, as we discussed last week, his involvement and his friendship with Bigelow got him in early with what was going on. But there was, in fact, a period where he got the boot and was not allowed on. And we're going to talk about that tonight, too.
What did he do to get the boot?
Well, he didn't do anything.
It wasn't Corbell, was it?
No, although I can imagine that would result in lots of people getting the boot.
You got to be careful because he's waving around that weaponized curiosity. You just don't want to be downrange when it goes off.
It just bums me out too because I'll listen to these interviews with George Knapp and there'll be cool quotes that George Knapp has, but it's so obvious that Corbell has stolen them and then just repeated them 100 times, so now they sound annoying. Okay. For example, it's not our job to explain the uninvestigated, it's our job to investigate the unexplained.
It sounds like Alex Jones could have said that as well, though. Let's be real.
Don't you dare do that to my Knapp.
I mean, that or Gary Busey.
Yeah, I do like Busey.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Busey, speaking of robot. Okay. Byron, I know I told two stories, kind of either extreme last week.
And we did do that correction, by the way.
Thank you. That's really good. I was feeling very silly about that. Lots of different categories. And Byron, here's the issue. You may have to clue me in if I am repeating things that I've already discussed.
Okay.
Because
do you
I've
want
talked
the two
to
stories?
so many... What?
Do you want to know your two stories that you
did?
No,
I know the two stories.
Okay.
I know the two stories. I'm just talking about other stuff. I want to make sure I'm not being too redundant. Yeah. But I've been telling stories to a lot of people about this. I had a long conversation with one of my students the other day and told him his assignment for this week was to research Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know what I've said on air and what I've said to students and what I've said to my husband and what I've said to my dad and what I've told my daughters for bedtime stories. Just help me out.
Okay.
If you'll remember, Byron, on day one at the ranch for the Gorman-Sherman family, they saw a werewolf. A dire wolf. I like saying werewolf because it's more fun, but they identified it as a dire wolf. This was only the beginning of strange animals that would appear all over the ranch, both under the watch of this family and under the watch of NIDS, our group from Bigelow's research. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few of these.
So the ranch just went, get out.
Oh, no, the ranch does everything. This ranch.
Sam, just so you know, I've already done 2 NIDS jokes, so...
Yeah, don't even. It was so annoying last week.
Okay, all right, thanks, man.
All right, first animal after the direwolf. One day they see a hyena attacking their horses in a corral. Now, obviously, we don't know that it was a hyena, but the way they described it was really big, fox-like tail, ferocious, and was genuinely terrifying the horses. They were able to scare it away, but like the horses were scratched up really badly from whatever the hell this creature had. Clearly, northern Utah is not a native home to hyenas.
Well, and also hyenas are pack animals. They don't just attack by themselves.
Right. Very strange as well. Dire wolves are also very extinct, so that's another reason.
Sure. Yeah.
Did they think that maybe it was like a plesiosaur that was in that valley when it was like all an ocean, and then the water partially receded, and it was the plesiosaur was trapped there, and that's
Sam,
what it was?
Don't act like she hasn't already tried to tie that into this.
Yep. Obviously.
Oh, yeah. Well.
So this is one of my favorite stories. You'll recall last week the horrifying story about the calf mutilation. Immediately after this, so you can imagine people on the ranch are pretty on edge, especially the family. But the NIDS people are there too, and everybody's pretty nervous. Also around the same time, they had basically lost over a third of their cattle. Okay. One night, NIDS guys are on site at this point. Terry hears cows out in the pasture in pain, okay? Jumps in his car, pissed off. It's like, I'm not going to lose any more cattle. Damn whatever's doing this. The NIDS guys follow him, filming. He gets to the homestead, and remember, there are 3 homesteads on the property. The middle homestead is the one where most of the madness happens, and sure enough, this is at the middle homestead. He sees these eyes way up in a tree. Now, bear with me, okay? The size of plates and yellow.
It was the moon, right?
Or yellow plates.
At the bottom of the tree, there's this big hairy thing that looks like a bear, except it's of the shape of a perfect circle. No music jokes. Terry fires his gun at the hairy circle. It immediately vanishes as though it was like a hologram or something. Then he fires at the eyes in the tree. Whatever it was falls out of the tree.
Sure, and says, let the wild rumpus start? Is that right?
I mean, that is kind of what this sounds like. Leaves a print, takes off into the brush. Okay, the NIDS guys follow it into the brush. They can't find anything. Again, kind of like the story with the dire wolf. They walk after it. Tracks just end. It's gone. But the print, which they do have the print on video, is like the print of a raptor. Like a big raptor dinosaur thingy-mabob.
Yeah.
Like a raptor, like a dinosaur, not a raptor, like a big hawk or something.
Prehistoric raptor.
Okay.
Great clarification, though, Sam. There have been not just big feet, but families of big feet. 8-foot-tall Bigfoot, along with like smaller ones, family, running across the pastures. That was like not an irregular event. This is one of my favorite stories. Occasionally, they would see geese flying over the house. Like, that's not super unusual, right?
Yeah, no, we got geese.
But, now tell me, you guys, if as you listen to this story, tell me what movie immediately comes to mind. I'm hoping it's the same one that came to mind for me. These geese would fly over, and they would get to a certain point immediately over the house, and it would be like they were hitting an invisible wall, and some of them would like fall down. Others would just like turn around and fly back and try and get around it. But it was
Notting Hill.
You're such an asshole.
The Mighty Geese? Is that?
Oh, God damn it. Cabin in the Woods, you assholes.
No, you are right.
Oh, my God. Okay. This one's really good. It kind of makes me wonder about Nessie.
Wait, did no one investigate these geese hitting a wall? Like, wouldn't you think you would throw like a rock up towards there, or like?
Okay, so maybe this is a good time to jump in with one of the issues that George Knapp discusses on many occasions. Clearly, and Sam is in this camp. I'm sure you are too, Byron, even though you're a little more polite about it. You start hearing the bulk of these stories and you're like, okay, if all this shit is happening on the ranch, why don't we have really clear video evidence? Why don't we have some clear recordings? Why don't we have anything that we can really stand on other than eyewitness testimonies and some pathology reports from cattle mutilations? Like, why isn't there anything more hard and fast? And George addresses this. And actually, in the only interview that Bob Bigelow has ever given on the subject, he addresses this too. Bob Bigelow would not be interviewed about Skinwalker. But for whatever reason, and it was probably, actually it's not for whatever reason, I'm sure it's because of Knapp. He did let Corbell interview him for the movie. He talks about how one of the most frustrating parts about doing this research, and I'm sure for him putting all this money into the research, was every time they would try to apply the scientific method, which one of the core elements of the scientific method is replicable results, right? You need to be able to see something and it needs to happen again in roughly that same manner in order to study it.
Yeah.
Nothing happened twice. Everything was so weird. And the people who have been there and spent a lot of time there, and this isn't just crazy Kelly folks, this is PhDs, will say it's as though it knew exactly what it was doing, whatever this phenomena is, and it deliberately evaded being evidenced.
Ooh, that makes sense because, science by definition is something that's not repeatable. So I think they got it right there.
Okay, you're an asshole. But that is the problem. They would say, okay, so this is what just happened. We're going to set up all this equipment so the next time it happens, we've got this captured, or we can measure this or whatever. There was never anything they were able to get ahead of time and catch something. They did plenty of reactive research, like I talked about last week after the cattle mutilation. They bring a tracker on site and vets on site, and they send samples of tissue off to be analyzed. And so we've got evidence from those things. It's hard for me because in some ways you say, okay, if this cow in a matter of 45 minutes was completely eviscerated, 60 pounds of flesh removed, not a drop of blood anywhere, pathology reports indicate it was something like a machete and then a scalpel that cut its ear off, and the ear that was cut off was the ear that had just been tagged by the rancher, that feels like evidence to me, right? But in order to truly follow the scientific method, they need to be able to replicate that. They would set up ways to study for the next time that happened, and then it would never happen again in that same manner, so they couldn't study it. And this, I think, ended up being one of the reasons that Bigelow sold, because it became an exercise in futility. Now, we'll go much more into this next week, but the hope is that with new technology that has clearly emerged since the beginning of Bigelow's study there, more than 20 years ago, the hope is that new technology will maybe finally be able to catch something a little more concrete.
It's another interesting thought or idea about Bigelow. He has the resources and the technology and what his company does, because he's a legit aerospace guy.
BASS is a very real thing.
Honestly, he's less crazy than Elon Musk.
Oh, yes.
And he believes in portals, Bigelow. I would think it would be, he can afford pretty much anything, literally anything. It would be cool if he had launched a satellite with the latest sensing gear, especially with his relationship with the defense community and the governmental defense community. I think he would have access to some really cool toys in terms of sensors, intelligence gathering, imaging, things like that, and put something up that just loiters in a geosynchronous orbit over Skinwalker.
That is a great idea. He and Fugel need to put their ducats together and do that. I love it. Sam, I'm going to write him an email.
I could draw him a picture of what I would like it to look like. I think that could be my contribution.
You draw a picture, and I'll write the email. I actually really like that idea. I think that's really cool.
All the markers got the caps left off. And
I know, it's so sad.
Has a stupid brown that's got some yellowish in it from going over yellow crayon. I can still draw a satellite, though.
Okay.
Hey, folks. It's me, Byron, and I've got some explaining to do. I've been advised by our lawyer that even though I personally believe this, and I really do, I can no longer legally say that Spring Hill Jack coffee is the only known cure for COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus. However, I can say that drinking a brew made from their masterfully roasted beans can't hurt. Plus, it'll keep you alert in the event that a mob of coughing marauders come knocking on your door looking to loot you of loo tissue. That's toilet paper, of course. And now that that's all been bought, why don't you stockpile Spring Hill Jack coffee while you still can? Go to springhilljack.coffee or search Spring Hill Jack Coffee on Amazon. That's SPRINGHEELD Jack.coffee. You can thank me later. I legally can't say it will save your life.
Marker Bucket is very sad.
Oh, that's just the sort of sacrifice you have to make during these hard times.
It's true. Back to the animals. All right. But does that make sense, you guys, about why the evidence, and I realize it sounds like a cop-out, but...
Well, it's interesting. I was just doing some research on the 37th parallel stuff, and I was kind of looking
someday
at...
we're going to do that.
I was looking at Skinwalker as almost like a travel center on the 37th parallel, and how many bizarre things do you see in the parking lot of a Love's truck stop,
I Stinker would be my example, but...
Okay, guys.
It just seems interesting.
Probably my favorite creature that's been witnessed on the property. We have no idea what it looks like because it is invisible. Now listen to this. Super cool. There's, different water, whether it's a little trough or ponds of water that collect after rain. This invisible thing would get out of whatever body of water was nearby, okay? You could see the shape of like the displaced water as it was getting out of the water, and you could see it walk through the herd of cattle with water dripping off of it. It gave off a really strong smell. Now, I don't know if you guys can, like, what's the nasal equivalent of visualize?
Smell.
If you guys can imagine smelling this,
okay.
They said it smelled like a powerful musk.
And they were overcome by its animal attraction, unable to resist.
Okay. So anyhow,
its sultry musk.
That animal was pretty cool.
Well, I just visualized the predator from the Predator.
Exactly.
movies,
And
right?
actually, George talks about how that's one of the ways that the eyewitnesses described it, was it kind of looks like the Predator. Clearly, when NIDS came on site and started attempting to document things and really apply the scientific method, before they decided how to approach their research, and George Knapp talks about this a lot, they came on the property while the family still owned it, as we discussed last week. They did a lot of debate around how to even approach the research. They interviewed the family extensively. They interviewed the neighbors. They started trying to build relationships with the tribe, though it sounds like better inroads have been made recently. I mean, for obvious reasons, I don't think the tribe's been super anxious to discuss this with most of the public personalities on the ranch. They looked for geomagnetic influence. They looked for hallucinogenic plants. And lots of this intensified when things started happening to those people. As George described, most people that came on site with the NIDS team were certainly open-minded, but did not believe in any of this. Like, they had been part of the NIDS team for a little while, and this wasn't the only place that NIDS was researching.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, it got to the point where they still couldn't say what the hell it was, but everybody knew there was something. And again, tons of equipment malfunctions. It was as though this phenomena was aware enough to interact only beyond the range of the camera. Byron, the fun story we told about even the destruction of a camera being on camera, and whatever it was invisible. So this phenomena is torturing people in many, many ways. I think all of us have heard about connections between Bigfoot and UFOs, even if we don't like to acknowledge those. But one of the things that I really haven't heard much about before is the connection between poltergeists and UFOs. And the poltergeist elements of this story are some of the scariest pieces to me, because it follows not just localized poltergeist energy type hauntings in the house, but Byron, what you heard referred to in the movie as hitchhikers. Yeah. And I may not believe in them if it weren't for Robbie Williams himself telling us he had a hitchhiker.
Quit mentioning him.
Love him.
You know how we're now putting episodes up on YouTube? He got us a copyright for that song Millennium and one of his smash hits.
Okay, come on. Robbie Williams, I'm trying to promote your music. Nobody's listened to Millennium in at least 19 years.
I know.
I'm trying to get people to listen to it.
Thanks, Robert. Back to the Sherman family, though.
The mother, this happened regularly, would go into the bathroom, put her hairbrush on the counter, lock the door, take a shower, get out, the hairbrush would be gone, but the door would still be locked. One time, the hairbrush turned up in the freezer a couple days later. The post hole digger, where the dad's digging post holes. Sam, how much does a post hole digger weigh?
I guess, are you talking about like the two-handled kind of pincher?
Yep.
How much does it weigh?
Yep.
30 pounds?
No, they are made pretty light.
Old school one.
They have always been pretty light.
Wooden handled metal bottom.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a shovel, but
15
maybe
pounds maybe.
Yeah.
They're heavier than that.
They're not. I think they're deliberately made light because it's very hard work.
So
the
anyhow,
neighbors have one out in the yard right now. They're putting in a fence. I can go way.
No,
I know. I was just going to say
I think
we
she's
should
talking
go
about the drill thing, maybe.
It's a post hole digger, but they said that it was really heavy.
Okay, let's just pretend that it's
fine.
heavy.
Okay.
All right. We can accept that they're just a bunch of little bitches.
Yeah.
Okay. Terry the rancher is not a bitch. You might be able to say that the PhD scientists are, but Terry the rancher is not. So he's got this post hole digger, lays it down, goes to, I don't know, get a drink of water or get some lunch or something. It disappears. It's gone for 3 weeks. 3 weeks later, it turns up 30 feet up in a freaking tree. Just weird shit. Like, how do you even explain that? His son was moving lumber. They moved this whole pile of wood. He and some of his friends went inside, came back out. All of the wood had been moved back to its original place except like an inch away. So you could see the imprint on the grass of where it had been, and it was moved an inch or two away from that, but it had been moved back. Just crazy, crazy things. And these are all consistent with a lot of poltergeist ghost stories that we hear. It's just so strange to me that this starts connecting to aliens and UFOs. But here is where the bridge story happens for me. The humanoid creatures that they saw outside their window, these...
Oh, yeah. The shadow people.
I mean, they kind of looked like shadow people, but they were associated with a lot of times when UFOs would be seen. And then, as I said, those things start showing up inside. And one of the more creepy things, this, I don't hear too much about, other than in really cool plot lines of movies. But the husband and wife started having the same dreams at night. Like, they would wake up the next morning and would talk to each other and realize they had been having the same exact dream.
Not just hopes and aspirations. Well, that's cute.
Well, it wasn't cute, though. They were not happy dreams most of the time. And they started waking up with little scoop marks on their hands.
Like scoop, like a little scoop of flesh.
Used like
right?
a
Flesh.
curette to dig it out.
Yeah.
Like a biopsy.
Yeah. Maybe whatever poltergeist activity was happening had something to do with interdimensional or interstellar travel, creatures, who knows?
Dermatology, maybe.
I mean, it could be dermatologists. Maybe they were just checking for skin cancer.
No.
I don't know.
The aliens are like, oh, you should probably get that looked at.
That mole is raised and growing.
Scalloped edges. That's got to go.
This is interesting to me because we talked a bit about the cattle mutilations last week, but it wasn't just this ranch where the cattle mutilations were occurring. It was on the neighbor's property as well, within this Uinta basin. This fella has 2 special cows. I don't know why they're special. I'm not a rancher. I don't understand this, but he had them in a... Okay, stop it, Sam. He had them in a special pen. He looks outside, and suddenly they're out of the pen on the ground. He goes outside. Both of them have 2 legs broken.
No.
Like their back legs, both of them, for both of the cows are broken. So he goes back in his house to get his gun. He's going to euthanize them because, I mean, that's what you do. Comes back out.
Just going to heal from that.
Comes back out. The cows are gone. So he goes back inside, super confused. An hour later, he hears noise outside. They've reappeared, and now they're like completely immobilized. Both of them have all 4 legs broken. And the way he described it, it was as though they had been dropped from midair.
Were they wearing like rollerblades or something?
Okay, so here's the thing. You guys, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Just for a second. That's freaking crazy and scary.
What a goof, though. Like, I mean, you know that it's like they're not supposed to drop the cows that hard.
Like,
what
Colin Keller,
like a rough first day for whoever's running that ship.
This has happened to me before, like at the grocery store, and the girls are like, "Oh, Dad, can we do the crazy crane?" And I'm like, "Sure, yeah, okay." And I get it, and something straight up, and then you let the kids go. Halfway up, it drops. Like, okay, try again, try the other one. Down, it drops, and you're like, okay, that's it, that's fine. We're going home.
I don't think that's what's happening. If you listen to Bigelow and Colin Kelleher, George Knapp too, if you listen to them talk about this, their collective experiences have led each of them individually to believe this is intentionally scaring people on the property. Okay?
So it's
now,
a goof.
Just a quick preview.
I can't tell you the number of cow legs I've broken. It's a funny prank.
Oh, man. Good times torturing animals.
So there is a... let's say one of the members of one of the research teams that has come forward, separate from Knapp, separate from Bigelow, though it has been verified that he was on site. And he has told some really crazy stories about some things that happened to him while he was there, some things that he witnessed, things that he very personally experienced that are perhaps along the lines of hitchhiking situations. And we're going to talk about that. It is outside the scope of Knapp, so it's not going to be tonight. But a couple of the things that he experienced had to do with trying to identify, is this, almost like when you hear about a haunting, is this a negative haunting? Is this a neutral haunting? Is this some type of a positive energy that's trying to help us? This guy that we'll get into further next week, but also George Knapp and the others, really seem to think it's a mix, like that there are some good and some bad.
Okay.
But the idea, they think things like these cows having all 4 of their legs broken, or the horrific mutilation of the little baby cow that we talked about last week, that those are intentional and
I don't know if you can
to
call
scare
it,
people.
I don't know if you can call it, horrifying or atrocious. It's just it's a different culture.
Oh,
Okay.
right, Sam.
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah, so lots and lots of mutilations, and it's worth noting that the NIDS team had investigated cattle mutilations from a number of other locations on the planet, and they said that the ones that happened here on Skinwalker Ranch were basically in a category all their own. That is some of the place where we have some hard evidence, of samples of tissue that have been sent off to research labs and at least have been able to form some conclusions. Now, Colin Kelleher, in one of his interviews with George Knapp, I think this part ended up in Skinwalker, the movie. He comes right out and says, based on the pathology reports, based on anything tangible that we've been able to measure, it doesn't necessarily point to extraterrestrial. And that, for him personally, he said, has raised more questions than anything, because the extraterrestrial thing would actually be the easy answer. He doesn't think it's that simple. So, speaking of extraterrestrials, UFOs. Now, one of the interesting things that happens on the Skinwalker Ranch, a lot of people will say they see something that looks almost like an RV shape.
On the ground or in the sky?
Well, they'll think at first that it's on the ground, and it'll start driving towards them, and then it gets a little bit up in the air, and they realize that it is not an RV unless it's a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang RV.
No, it's the RV from Spaceballs.
I was going to... Well, that's better than mine, Sam, so I'm not going to say mine.
Were you going to say Magic School Bus?
No, I was going to say maybe E.T. grew older and got a family, and now he's got an RV instead of a bike.
And he thought that this would be one last chance, maybe before the kids go off to college, to get everyone together and just have a good time like it used to be. But nobody wants to go.
Okay, God, you're depressing me tonight. That's awful and sad.
I like that after all the animal cruelty jokes, that's the one that gets you.
That's the one.
Yeah, A lot of the UFO sightings happen in the daylight, many silver discs. In fact, Sam, you'll like this. There's actually a photo that Mr. Fugel presents with his garbled voice in the Skinwalker movie of something that looks strangely similar to the Millennium Falcon. May the 4th be with you.
Oh, would you look at that?
It is. I wonder if he got that out the window of his Lamborghini when he was driving out to Skinwalker.
I mean, it's very funny because in Hunt for Skinwalker, the movie, we talked about this. Brandon Fugel was still covert at that point. He didn't want anybody to know that he was the guy that owned the place.
Your air quotes.
But if you look at the interview and the footage that's used of him, 3 dead giveaways. Number 1, black turtleneck. Number 2,
douche bag.
Fancy ass watch.
Oh, yeah.
Number 3, when asked about whether he thought they were going to find evidence and be able to do some very specific scientific method-based research that would yield in people changing their minds about this kind of phenomena, he said, I am very prayerful that will happen. I'm like, okay, well, clearly this guy was Mormon, and clearly it was Brandon Fugel. So
prayerful is like hopeful, except more work.
I guess that is one way to look at it. Okay. Alrighty.
Brandon Fugel looks like the second in command villain in any sort of like intense drama's first season. He's like,
yeah, that ends up dying in the second to last episode.
Yeah.
Only because he failed at whatever he was supposed to do, not because he was actually brought down by the good guys.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Who's the guy that you like that dances in Mad Men? Pete?
Oh, yeah, I like Pete.
He's like Pete meets Tyrell Wellick from Mr. Robot.
I like Tyrell, too.
Wellick is great.
I freaking love that Wellick. He's
also,
really grown on me over the years.
Speaking of birthdays, no, we're not.
It's Wellick's birthday?
No.
Is it Tyrell Wellick's birthday?
It's not Tyrell Wellick's birthday.
Other UFOs that have been seen almost look like stealth fighters surrounded by, bear with me here, disco/Christmas lights. At first, in fact, based on the mutilations and some of the UFO sightings, the Sherman/Gorman family originally became convinced that the government was trying to chase them off the property for whatever reason. And in fact, this is, I guess this is in line with how many of us might picture a rancher in the middle of nowhere. But Terry would go out at night and follow some of these lights around, okay? Because they would hover over like pretty close. They would fly low, and he felt like maybe he could shoot them. And so he would go out at night.
That's usually, I'd like to check things out, and I'm like, I bet I could shoot that.
Yeah. So he would go out.
And then I try to shoot it.
He would go out and watch as it hovered over the pasture, kind of shine spotlights down on the ground. It kind of reminds me of Eve in WALL-E, where she's like searching around.
There's the Disney reference.
Yeah, there it is. We got one in.
Well, so one night he's out there, he's hiding behind some rocks and watching this craft. Suddenly his knee cracks. It's really cold out and his knee cracks. It was very clear that whatever this object was hurt him, and it jerked its light towards him. He freaked out and ran away, obviously, as I would. You don't try and shoot a gun at something like that. That's not going to help.
Oh, disagree.
And where there are enough respectable UFO sightings, there are also crop circles. Skinwalker Ranch is no exception. In fact, there were burned areas, very frequently in a triangular pattern. There were also, and this is a bit of a stretch, this isn't quite as much of a crop circle, but it is literally a circle, and it's caused by some weird unknown force. There would be random holes. One night, there were dozens of these huge holes dug by the third homestead, again, like this super spooky spot, over the course of one night, and it was just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds of dirt. Now,
graboids, right? Are we all thinking graboids?
Maybe. I mean, as Sam will attest to based on his yard work this week, digging holes is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
You want to make sure there's a rock or something nearby you can clamber up.
Oh my God. You guys, you're killing me.
Uh-huh.
You're killing me.
I know.
That story about the holes was actually the original thing that pushed Gorman Sherman family over the edge to reach out to local news. And that was what started the whole ball rolling in the mid-90s, because that's what Bigelow saw, and that's what George Knapp saw, and that's how everybody got involved. But those weird holes that appeared overnight, super, super strange. Now, because the ranch was sold directly from Bigelow to Fugel, and because Knapp is friends with Bigelow, he's been able to form a relationship with Fugel. He has been on the ranch, is evidenced in that movie. He's been on the ranch since it changed hands. And he definitely, I think, has been able to continue a solid thread of investigation throughout. In fact, there was a really great interview a few weeks ago, right, when this new History Channel show premiered on Coast to Coast. And it is only available if you're a subscriber, but you can get the transcript online, where George Knapp did a 2-hour-long interview with Fugel about a lot of specifics and things that aren't necessarily showing up on the show. We'll talk more about that next week. The orb piece, which, you could either connect to the UFOs or you could connect to the ghosts, is one of my favorite pieces that they discuss. The orbs have been around there forever, multiple types of orbs. Okay. First type of orb, white, kind of softball size light. Second type of orb, red orbs.
Softball sized from what perspective? How far away is this orb?
Okay, I don't know. Well, this is the way they're being described. I don't know.
Fine. I'm going to backtrack here and say, why is no one shooting at it?
Okay, well, we just talked about that. We're going to end with a quote tonight, Sam, that will address your shooting thing, too. Blue orbs, bigger than a softball, Byron.
Okay, thank you.
Filled with blue bubbling liquid. Anytime they got close, anytime the cows got close to them, it would scare the hell out of them. So here's a cool story. This one night, and this is either right before or right after Bigelow purchased the ranch, but Terry's talking on the phone with Bigelow, and he sees his dogs outside in the pasture chasing one of these orbs, leading them way across the pasture, and they're kind of jumping up in the air at it. So he gets off the phone, follows the dogs, hears yelping in pain as soon as they get into the brush on the other side of the pasture. And when he gets to that spot, there are 3 greasy blotches on the ground, like some kind of weird greasy black substance.
Oh, do they have kids?
Dogs never returned.
Oh.
Because that's what I would...
Super sad. So these big orange orbs would appear once in a while. This is truly my favorite story from the ranch. This story not only is amazingly cool, but I also have a recollection of hearing this story as a wee little captain listening to Art Bell at night with my father. Byron, I feel like maybe you and I have talked about this story and you may have heard this too, but I don't know for sure. Okay, this is chapter 19 of Hunt for the Skinwalker. It's called The Tunnel. August 25th, 1997. The night was warm, clear, and beautiful. The NIDS team was sitting silently on the edge of a bluff. 2 colleagues were about a mile away on the side of the property monitoring another hotspot. Mike and Jim, these are 2 of the researchers, had been in specific contact with them every couple of hours. Some 4 hours into the watch, Jim, the most experienced investigator, had quietly climbed down into the small pasture and sat in the middle of the field to meditate. He had found over the years that meditation sometimes activated whatever lurked on the property. Whatever that was, although it happened too few times to be anything other than an anecdotal observation. Nothing happened. 2:30 a.m., after a 6-hour watch, they decided to move their operation to a different part of the ranch. Quickly, they began to disassemble the camera from its tripod and pack up the 2 equipment containers filled with the tools of the scientific investigator's trade. So, again, this is when the monitoring equipment is being shut down. Pay attention to that. Cameras, portable magnetic field detectors, and night vision binoculars. All of these things they had with them. 1997, their Generation 3 binoculars were considered state-of-the-art. Sam, do you know what Generation 3 binoculars are? Weapons authenticity!
Sam's Weapons Authenticity Report.
In 97?
Yeah. So it says something here about they worked by amplifying low-level ambient light through a series of high-tech photo multiplier tubes. Can you explain that to us?
Well, I mean, generally, like I'm not super science guy, but Gen 1, 2, and 3 night vision are all based on light amplification. So they would take any existing ambient light, so there had to be starlight or like some moonlight reflecting off something, and then just, I don't know how it works, magic, just like making it brighter. Like the newest generation of low light or no light capable optics is infrared or like basically you don't need any light at all.
Thank you for that report.
Sorry, the ones that you have seen through.
You mean the ones that you saw the UFOs through? Are these the ones you're talking about?
The UFOs through.
Oh no.
Okay.
Those are Gen 3s.
Okay. Cool. Very good. Through these night vision binoculars, the scene appeared to be in daylight with sharp, crisp outlines, not the fuzzy, wavy image visible through Russian equipment. Just as Jim was thinking that his meditation hadn't produced a damn thing, his eye caught a very faint light on the track 150 feet below him. He watched, mildly puzzled, thinking that it might be a small piece of glass on the track that was reflecting the ambient light. It was a faint yellowish color, and as he watched, it appeared to grow bigger. 20 seconds later, he nudged Mike. It was definitely getting brighter, and as both of them watched, it slowly seemed to be getting bigger.
That's the size of a softball.
Bigger than a softball now, Byron.
Oh, good.
Hand me the camera.
Jesus Christ, it's almost a dodgeball.
Oh, my God. Hand me the camera, Jim muttered. At the same time, Mike quietly and efficiently unpacked the night vision binoculars he had just put away. Jim set up the tripod and positioned his camera loaded with infrared film in line with the light that had now grown to 6 inches in diameter. It was still a dull yellow, but had definitely grown brighter. Carefully, Jim set the shutter to 30 seconds, reasoning that a long exposure might capture the mystery light on the freshly loaded roll of infrared film. He was ready to pop off all 36 shots if necessary. As Mike brought the binoculars to his eyes, Jim heard the sharp sucking in of breath. Jim could see that the light was now more than a foot wide and was still growing larger. This was obviously not a reflection. The dirty yellow expanding light seemed to be positioned above the ground rather than directly on the ground.
Holy cow.
It's a tunnel, not just a light, Mike whispered. Jim ignored his partner's growing agitation as he increased the length of time exposures to 40, then 50 seconds. Mike was now standing up. Jesus Christ, Mike said hoarsely. Something's in the tunnel! Jim looked carefully at the light below. It had now expanded to more than 2 feet. Something that big should definitely register on his film. Oh my God, Mike said, suddenly thoroughly frightened. There is a black creature climbing out. I can see his head. Jim felt alarm. His companion was plainly bordering on panic. It has no face, whispered Mike. Oh my God, it just climbed out. Jim rubbed his eyes and shook his head. All he could see was a dirty yellow light, now about 4 feet in diameter, 100 feet below him. Why couldn't he see what Mike was seeing? Suddenly it dawned on him, the binoculars. He motioned for Mike to hand them to him, but not before increasing the time exposure to 90 seconds. Mike ignored him. It's on the ground. Oh my God, it walked away. As Mike danced on the ledge a few feet away, plainly in a panicky state, Jim could see the light decreasing in size. Within 30 seconds, the dull yellow light had shrunk to about half its full diameter and was losing intensity. In the meantime, Jim pulled Mike over close to him and asked, "What happened?" "A big black creature just crawled through that tunnel, got onto the ground, and walked away," Mike said. "That's what happened, and it's lurking around here somewhere." Jim felt a chill. I only saw that yellow light, he said doubtfully. Are you sure? Jesus Christ, of course I'm sure, Mike replied. The night vision turned the light into a 3D tunnel, and a large creature, I'm thinking maybe 400 pounds, at least 6 foot tall, just crawled out of that damn tunnel. Mike was sweating profusely and still breathing quickly, but he seemed to be regaining control over himself. By that time, the yellow light had gradually faded and was no longer visible. After 15 minutes or so, they grabbed some detectors and clambered as quietly as possible down the steep, rock-filled ground below them. But once near the track, a strong odor assailed their nostrils. It seemed to be centered on the spot where the light or tunnel had been. Jim felt slightly nauseous from the pungent smell.
Flush.
Dude, sounds like Bigfoot to me. Quickly, Mike scanned the ground in a 20-foot diameter circle for any signs of radiation. Only background levels were detectable. Meanwhile, Jim scanned the area with a tri-field meter to detect any unusual magnetic spokes. Nothing registered. The team spent the next day searching for footprints, but the ground was hard and none were visible. The photos were disappointing, showing only a single, very faint light on one. So that story, like this tunnel opening, a creature crawling out of it, and the tunnel shrinking and going away, is probably in the top 5 mental paranormal images that I've had in my brain over my lifetime. That one's been with me a really long time, and I actually didn't understand until the last few years that it was connected to Skinwalker Ranch. I just remember hearing that story and thinking it was the craziest, scariest thing I'd ever heard. Have you guys heard that one before?
I think I heard it when we first did an episode of Skinwalker Ranch, maybe an abridged version of that. But yeah, no, it's been a while.
Isn't that so cool? And there actually is another instance of a portal being seen before the NIDS guys got there. Or maybe it was after the NIDS guys got there. But Terry, the rancher, was one of the people that saw it too.
Wow.
You guys, I mean, that's just freaking crazy. That's super spooky. Like, imagine if you just looked out your window right now, Byron, and in the middle of your street, there's just this tunnel that opens up and this dark, giant creature crawls out of it.
Well, I mean, I had something kind of like that happen during our Twitch stream when I looked out the window and I saw my 6'3" friend Luke, who I hadn't seen in weeks, delivering ice cream to my door. That was
French toast ice cream.
It was cinnamon toast crunch ice cream. It was very good.
Oh, cinnamon toast crunch ice cream sounds way better than French toast.
Fuck your ice cream.
Yeah, why didn't you bring me ice cream, Luke?
Well, I mean, maybe he will now. Who knows?
No, I don't want to guilt him into doing that. He's too nice. Then he
I don't
actually
want him
will
around
go
my
do
house
it.
either, Kelly.
That's not what I mean.
Great guy. I appreciate the
He
cream.
really is.
Mm-hmm. So, you guys, these have been some spooky stories. I do want to end on a fun one.
Okay, well, this podcast is called Fun Day, isn't it?
Yeah, so Men in Black. We told a story last week about 2 dogmen that I think almost fit the qualification of Men in Black with the trench coats and the smoking cigarettes. But there were sightings of black helicopters over the land. Men in Black were seen not only on this ranch, but on the periphery of the land. They would see the big black SUVs, guys in all black suits getting out with binoculars and watching things. Pretty weird. Now, this guy, I don't know that he was a man in black, but this is a pretty cool story. It's fun because there's an air of authenticity to it because of the Terry and his son and the way that they dealt with this guy. So this is while the Sherman Gorman family is still on the ranch. One day, a bearded dude arrives at the front gate, big guy, and he says, I have driven hundreds of miles. I've been drawn here. Can I please come on your land and meditate?
My ranch is your ranch, buddy.
The guy was really, really pushy and finally talks the dad and son into it. They make him leave his car at the gate. They drive him to the middle of the homestead where the guy wanted to sit. He starts looking at the sky and chanting, and the dad and son are kind of like leaning on the tailgate of their truck, watching, thinking he's crazy, waiting for him to finish. Then suddenly, they hear a cowbell from the brush. Even though they have no cowbells.
It was Blue Oyster Cult.
I knew you were going to fucking do that. I actually almost said no Blue Oyster Cult jokes, but I was like, no, that's too low-hanging fruit. Sam's not going to do that, but he did.
Oh, God, please don't overestimate me.
So they don't use cowbells on any of their cows. They start seeing this opaque thing. Again, predator idea, guys.
Yeah.
Moving through, then moving out of the brush. They describe it very specifically as looking like the predator, as though it's bending light around it. Okay? This bearded fella, completely clueless to what's happening. His eyes are closed, head up towards the sky, still chanting. the dad and Terry and his son are not necessarily the nicest because they don't give this guy a heads up.
Were they able to get to the chopper?
Oh my God. So the figure is walking right up to this guy. He gets right next to him, and suddenly there's just this incredibly loud guttural roar. The guy freaks out, falls back on the ground, scurries over to the car, begs them to get him off the property right away. I mean, he didn't actually hurt the guy, but that's one of those examples of, okay, that seems to be something that if it doesn't intend harm, it's at least trying to get people the hell away. And that one spooks me a bit.
Wow, not what that man was expecting, I guess.
And unfortunately, guys, we have this giant hole in the middle of the timeline because when BASS, the Bigelow Aerospace whatever organization, the one that's like legit and sends things into outer space, when they teamed up with the government in the late 2000s, everything that happened on the ranch at that time, that's the stuff that George didn't see. He was not allowed on the ranch, so he was on the ranch before, he was on the ranch after, but because this was all being done by the government, the research that was there, and again, this has been confirmed. This isn't like a conspiracy theory. The government has confirmed that through their organization, they were doing research on the ground there. Sam and I were talking about this earlier this week, and he really feels that it means nothing because the government, especially the DIA, will throw money at anything. But I would say, yes, $22 million is not that much money for the DIA.
Yeah.
That said,
you got a bunch of Fox Mulders down there. They'd be doing a good job.
Right. If they're taking it seriously enough that, they're not letting people on without clearance, they're clearly doing something secretive, and Bigelow is not allowed to speak about what happened on the ranch during that time. None of those records have been made public. We hope they will at some point, but they haven't been made public anywhere. And so we have this big hole in the middle. I have to believe that there's something to it because when all of the activity had previously died down, then this government research thing happens, and then Brandon Fugel comes on and buys it. Unless there was something interesting going on there, I can't imagine he would have bought the property. Because why? If he didn't think that there was something he was going to be able to see there. So,
but he also thinks some other weird
things
without pointing a finger at his faith.
Yes, I know. I want to reserve judgment on the History Channel show, and we are going to talk about that next week. I really am excited to see what evidence comes out of that, but I'm even more anxious and hopeful and prayerful that we will be able to get the information from
come on
that we'll be able to get the information from that period of time that the government was actively researching, because there's something there. And furthermore, Fugel has confirmed that the government has attempted to create more partnerships with him to come and do more research there
in exchange for more rights.
Yes. In the end, what does George Knapp think? He has no idea what's going on. He's asked a lot, obviously, and what I've heard him respond in a number of interviews is he thinks it's probably, some of it has something to do with the government. Probably quite a bit of it does not. Maybe it's extraterrestrial, maybe it's interdimensional, but he does believe very firmly that whatever the force is, it's deliberately evading them from an evidence capture perspective, though it is clearly interacting with them. And when it comes to shooting them down, Sam, here's a quote that I will leave you with. This is from an interview he did with Lee Spiegel earlier this year. Love that Spiegel. Brandon Fugel has said the same thing that Jeremy, you and I have said in different presentations and that Colin Kelleher taught me a long time ago. This thing sizes you up. When you get on the property, it sizes you up. The people who have had the worst experiences are those who go in with sort of a cocky attitude. I'm not afraid of this thing. Let's get it on. People who are often packing...
the Zach Baggins approach.
People who are often packing guns. Gung-ho military folks, security guys who think that they're not afraid of anything. They're the ones that have the worst time of it. You go in with a more respectful attitude. You'll kind of gird your mental loins and let it know you're ready to learn something. That seems to be the best way to approach it.
Let's not talk about my mental loins.
Because at a minimum, you don't have as many negative consequences. So, Sam, should we ever get an exclusive on-site opportunity at the Skinwalker Ranch, I expect you to gird your mental loins and temper your cockiness.
You best behave.
That's a lot of talk of loin and cock.
Okay. What are the Utah gun laws? I bet they're pretty loose.
They don't have any.
There we go.
Yeah,
there we go.
That was my guess as well.
Yeah.
And Kelly, I mean, thank you so much for that report. This journey through the Knapp, taking a nap about, there's got to be
a nap
something
with the
there.
nids?
It's been great to walk through the perspective of someone who's, got 2 Peabody Awards. It's very interesting.
He is so great. He's really the bee's knees.
Well, someday we'll talk to George Knapp, I would imagine.
God, I would love to.
We'll
really
cross
love
paths, I'm sure.
I talk to him pretty regularly.
Okay, well, that's good. Sam's officially lost it.
Like I said at the top of the show, raising kids is tough. And take it from me, a guy in his 30s with no kids. I'm actually very curious to talk about today's film with you two.
Suddenly, through all of this, it escaped me that I had actually agreed to watch one of Brandon's movies. Oops.
Can't wait to talk about it as we review Z.
We hope you're enjoying your visit here this evening. Now, on with the show.
Z is a 2019 horror film directed by our good buddy, Brandon Christensen. A couple is shaken to the core when their 8-year-old son meets a creepy and ominous imaginary friend. I love Brandon. He's just such a nice guy.
He is a really nice guy. I do have a question about this movie, though. In Canada, is it called Zed?
That's a good question that you may notice a voice is missing. Sam is not here because he's
in Canada.
He is in Canada preparing for an interview with Brandon that he will be doing the interview from Montana. And I think that Brandon actually lives in Las Vegas, Nevada, but he is a Canadian, and we met him in 2017 at the Overlook Film Festival when his film Stillborn premiered.
Yeah. I need to understand how he lives in Las Vegas.
I kind of agree. Anytime I've spent there after 12 hours, I want out. But I've heard that there's
I don't even want in. I want out so badly.
Did we not cover Stillborn for the show?
I don't know because I had my earmuffs on for everything regarding Stillborn, so I couldn't begin to tell you whether we covered it or not.
No, I don't believe you did. Sam did a review for it for the site, but Brandon, he can't seem to leave kids alone. Stillborn is a film that the content you did not wish to partake in.
No, couldn't handle it. I sat down to watch Z with Sam, and I'm like, wait a second. I wasn't even thinking, what the hell did you guys trick me into?
I was waiting for you to finally catch up. You said yes so fast to covering this film, and it's...
Well, just because Brandon's so nice, I was like, okay.
He's a great guy. We caught up when I saw this at the Telluride Horror Show this last year. Yeah, it was great to see him, and his film shook me up. I don't want to spoil all of those scares, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more, but the year that Stillborn premiered, he got Best Scare, and I think that this film also got Best Scare or Best Midnighter. I can't remember.
Well, I know Mr. Ebert said it was the scare of the year.
Brian Tallarico at RogerEbert.com says, there's one in particular, talking about scares, that made me gasp in a way I don't think I will any other horror movie this year.
Which means scare of the year.
It's the moment you know this movie, unlike its title character, isn't playing around. And Brandon's really good at that. There's some moments in his first film that would have ruined you for a very long time, and I'm
so
happy
glad I didn't watch that one.
Yep. This film, though, here we are. Imaginary friend film. We got ourselves another nice house.
2 nice houses, actually. Her childhood home was a pretty nice looking house, too.
Those trees are too close to the facade.
I don't know. I kind of like being... it's very comforting to be surrounded by trees.
I agree, but I would be concerned about the structural integrity of that eventually. Those trees have to come down.
You think the roots are...
I mean, it could be doing a number to that foundation, but yeah, We were introduced to several characters right off the bat. We got Elizabeth, her son Josh, and her husband Kevin. Tell me what you think about Kevin.
Complete douchebag. Before she dealt with anything regarding Z, she should have just gotten rid of him.
I mean, Felicia, one of the writers at Frightday.com, did a review for this. She felt like Kevin was pretty clueless as well. I wasn't as sensitive to that. He seemed like a pretty normal dad.
I would not give him clueless. I would give him asshole.
Okay, well, I mean, and I guess the reason for that comes out in a little bit. But before we get there, we have pizza night, and we're introduced to another character, someone who's pretty shy to say his name at first. Eventually, we find out this is Z.
Yeah.
The score becomes very intense. The scribbles of a black crayon on paper, and it's just a Z, which I think it highlights a really strong thing about this film. Is the combination of sound design, score, and the way things are shot. Because without that scene wouldn't have been scary or intense at all, you know? And he brings that back a lot.
Right. And I knew you were going to talk about all those things. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to tell you what it was, but I can tell you that there were a bunch of things present in this movie that weren't in one bedroom. And I was
interesting.
Like,
yeah.
These are the artsy things that Sam and Byron talk about all the time. And whatever makes a movie good, this one had and that one didn't.
Well, Brandon, he's got a lot of experience in commercial film making as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's really good at quickly manipulating emotion, you know, and I think that's a really great skill to have if you want to be this kind of horror filmmaker.
Agreed.
Because these, to me, are like Blumhouse films, which Blum Madness does continue behind the screens at
you betcha.
patreon.com/Frightday. But yeah, these, to me, are like Blumhouse films, but better. He has found a way to make a mainstream style film that I enjoy more than those, you know? And it's because he's kind of mean. Like, great guy, mean filmmaker. Like,
so mean. So mean.
He's really good at twisting the knife.
Well, and this one, I was good with it. It didn't bother me, especially because, like, the kid that was, in essence, a victim of this situation, we really didn't get to know a lot before he was acting like a total shithead.
Well, I don't even think he really fully acted like a total shithead, which is really interesting. Josh, played by Jet Klein, most of the things that he's accused of or does do, we don't know because most of it's done off camera, you know? What we see is this sweet, creative kid. For the most part, I think. But then, I mean, you hear stuff he's doing. He's like suspended for language and hitting his classmates, talking about hurting animals.
Threatening to kill animals. Yep.
We don't really see any of that, or at least for the first probably 3/4 of this film, you know?
Yes, very true.
I guess it's really interesting because it makes you question what is going on, you know? It makes you, by not showing it, become an active participant in trying to figure out what the situation is.
Exactly.
Which is kind of cool.
It is cool, and I think it definitely takes some twists as you start to wonder what the driving force behind Z is, which I thought was really fun.
What do you think makes a really good creepy kid? I was sitting there thinking about this.
Dead eyes.
Dead eyes, soft cheeks, parted hair, I guess. I don't know. That's like the classic Children of the Corn kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Pet Cemetery,
I also,
The Omen.
In terms of childlike things that become scary, there was a scene in this that was, I think, pretty clearly a homage to Poltergeist. I guess I shouldn't put words in Brandon's mouth, but that's what it seemed like.
Maybe.
With a whole bunch of toys that light up and come alive just like in a Poltergeist movie.
Yeah.
It's just all of these things surrounding childhood, I think, can be pretty spooky because there's this certain vulnerability to childhood that I don't think you recognize until you're out of childhood and looking back on it. It makes it more scary. You know, I happen to subscribe to the belief that none of us are in control of our own fate. But as a child, we're really not in control of our own fate. This certainly tapped into that, too.
Well, yeah, if you're curious, you can definitely go to the free will episode we did in, 147. We covered Insidious Last Key and talked a little bit about that. But
well, the other thing that this really struck with me is all of us with children right now are home and spending lots of time with children.
Sure.
And clearly, our kids have not yet become murderers.
Some might.
There are days when, one of them, most of the time they're both pretty well behaved, but when one of them will just refuse to do what you ask and things start teetering very close to the brink of full anarchy and terrifying chaos, if they actually decided to put their foot down and say
no,
it's actually really scary.
I mean, like,
right, you're very limited and it's very scary.
I could see that because I mean, I have not experienced anything like that because I don't have any kids, but I can imagine something that in your case came out of your body. I mean, you put everything into this child.
Yeah.
You're the inputs, and then that happens.
You should see their dance moves. It becomes very clear.
I see the dance moves every day. You send me about a minute.
Did you notice those dance
video?
moves today? Those Bon Jovi ones?
Yeah, I did. The one where your wait, what?
One of them just beats the other one in the middle of the song.
One of your children did give the other a boot,
and then did some really fun dancing hand gestures afterwards, telling her to stay the hell away.
Yeah, that was good. She was smooth, but yeah, I think that's especially why I wanted Sam to talk to Brandon about this movie, is because he has kids, and I think that Brandon likes to focus on themes of children. Like last one, it was in newborns. And this time it's an 8-year-old boy. Yeah. Also the struggles of parenthood. But going back to the toys, though, the light show that you saw in kind of the nod towards Poltergeist, the Z alphabet toy.
Zed. Remember, the director is Canadian.
It's such a cool device. Like Stillborn, there was a baby monitor that.
Oh God, I'm so glad I didn't watch that.
In this case, the little toys where you push the letter and it says what it is, except it does say Z, so maybe it is not as Canadian as you think. And it kind of informs the family when Z's presence is there. Really intense, really interesting, again assisted by the score and the soundtrack, but yeah, really cool device. I do want to talk how you felt about one thing without talking about it at all. So this is purely for people who have checked this movie out now on Shudder, which I recommend you do. The Playdate with Daniel.
Yeah, so first off, before we talk about the specific Playdate, I thought this was a really interesting thing too. And I'm really lucky we have a different setup at our house, but a lot of my close friends stay home all day with their kiddos, and I think have experienced to a certain degree a distancing from all the other pieces of their lives the more responsibility they take on with their kids. And it's weird because I think all of us are feeling isolated right now, but I think some of those parents deal with the isolation better because that's kind of how they've been existing. Even Sam, like, he's normally home with the girls during the day and he's an introvert, so it doesn't bother him as much.
No.
But still, like, that isolation and feeling, it puts even more of the all of your eggs are in the kid basket thing.
Sure.
It becomes really, really hard when that starts going wrong, because it's very clear that the mom in this, Beth, her friendships are centered entirely around her son. And so when her son becomes, a pariah.
He's something about Kevin's.
Right. She does too. And there's nobody for her to engage in a close friendship with. She can't talk to her husband because he's a complete jackass. She can't talk to her son because he's losing his mind and has a demonic best friend. And she really doesn't have any friends. Oh, yeah. And her sister is dealing with a lot of mental illness, substance abuse situations.
Well, because their mom died.
Yeah. Well, and clearly their mom had not been awesome to them for a period of time.
Yeah.
But we start to peel back the layers and figure out a little more about why that might be. But anyhow, back to the Playdate.
Yes.
This is sad for a number of reasons. She's gone through this whole list of kids in his class trying to find somebody that will allow him to come over and play. And I get the feeling, like, of course she cares about her son and she wants Joshua to come and have a really nice time, right? But she also needs some camaraderie herself. Like, she needs to have another human adult in her life that she can talk to about the trauma she's dealing with from her son's behavior. So we aren't even going to talk about The Thing then, huh?
I don't think so. And I don't know how much further we really want to go. let's just say that the relationship with Z sort of ramps up. There's a play zone scene, which is really interesting. And then they have milk and spaghetti.
Okay, so hold on. Time out.
Okay.
The play zone scene. When we get a glimpse of Z
for the first time. So you're kind of creeped by Z, huh?
Oh, I mean, as you pointed out, I think before we started recording, this is definitely a Kelly creature. It's a Kelly horror creature. It is all of the things that terrify me.
Mm-hmm. And you know me, and if Brandon is listening to this, no offense, those kinds of creatures don't do much for
Love
me.
the creatures. It reminded me in some ways of the creepy Insidious guy.
Darth
and it was
Maul.
a little bit Babadooky.
Yeah.
And then the concept behind him reminded me a little bit of Toby from Paranormal Activity.
Yeah.
But he had this whole persona himself, and it was what I thought was super creepy is as the movie goes on, all of these other characters, these imaginary friends that you've seen in different movies, they're at least pretending to be nice.
Sure.
And here, Z's just a straight up terrifying asshole.
Yeah, it makes for a really interesting dynamic between the kid and the friend.
Yeah.
He's not outright horrified by Z, and that kind of makes me wonder like how he introduced himself.
Yeah.
Did he let the wild rumpus begin at first and then just kind of like slide into the role that he serves later on? Was he a good monster then became the Z we know?
Yeah. I would love to hear more of the backstory.
The one thing about the spaghetti and milk scene that I like is we start seeing the cracks between the relationship between Beth and her husband, whose name is Kevin.
Kevin just sucks.
I mean, yeah, he kind of sucks. He did ignore the notes from the school. Is that right?
And let's be honest, it was very clear that he ignored the notes, not because he was trying to help his son, but because he didn't want to deal with having a real conversation with his wife about something serious that needed to be handled. So he just brushed it under the rug so he didn't have to deal with it.
And then he continued to pretend like Z was real to make his son feel better. And she's frustrated by this because she had the play zone experience. And she's like...
And he totally doesn't believe her. And there's nothing worse than not being believed. And I just wanted to reach through the screen and strangle him, especially when he starts to pretend like he believes her. And then he's like, of course not. What's wrong with you?
Z isn't real. Grow up.
Yeah.
The cracks really start showing at that point. And she starts cracking. We haven't talked about Stephen McHattie at all. He is the child psychiatrist. You would know him from Pontypool. He's a great character actor, very intense. Dr. Seeger.
Shitty psychiatrist.
Yeah, not very good. I think his memory should have been a little bit better. It seems like but we won't talk about that because that seems like some third act fun.
There was a point where I almost felt like he was in on it.
He was just very careless in what he remembered. Kelly, have you ever fed medicine to your children by crushing it up and putting it in milk?
You know, never say never, but I haven't yet.
Good.
No.
And how much milk does your family drink? Because there's a lot of milk in this movie. And
we really don't drink a lot of milk. We only drink organic milk because we're weird about hormones and stuff. But, you know...
A lot of milk.
Cereal, basically. Nobody in our house at all drinks cups of milk.
That would make me do what happened.
Lots of cheese.
Yeah. The second scare here, that barf scare.
I love that you're counting that as a scare.
That's a jump scare.
I mean, it was for the mom. She was like, I think her exact reaction was, whoa.
Yeah. I thought that was great.
Which was amazing.
Oh, all right. Well, there's a lot more happens in this thing, and I don't know if we should spoil too much more. Do you have any other scenes you want to talk about real quick?
Hold on. Let me think.
I wrote down Hide and Zeke, which is kind of fun.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah,
that was good.
But we can't do that.
I think we covered it. Yeah. Well, I mean, at least the things that we are comfortable discussing, because this is a movie we don't want to ruin for anyone.
Yeah. Kelly, do you have any final thoughts here?
So I went through this whole roller coaster of emotions with this movie because I was excited that you guys were going to talk to Brandon, and he's pretty nice. And then I sat down to watch it, and I was like, oh shit, that's right, Stillborn. That was going to be the most traumatic movie ever, so I didn't watch it. What if this one's just like that? And then we started watching it, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is kind of spooky. And then I was like, God, this husband better turn out to be an asshole on purpose because he's horrible. I love this kind of movie. I love a spooky, is this a real thing or is it fake? And the creature that was the villain is a perfectly designed villain to scare the hell out of Kelly. I very much enjoyed watching this movie, and for whatever reason, I must just be in a very weird mental space, but the jump scare that we have danced around a bunch didn't bother me. It was weird because I didn't even think about it until after you texted me. I was like, what's he talking about? I was like, oh yeah, maybe that should have bothered me. Huh. Weird. I avoided being traumatized by Brandon, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed this movie. And I would give Zed 7.7 floor pillows to stay out of the lava.
Gotta stay out of the lava. Visually, this is a great film. I think the script is written really tightly. The characters, I know you don't like the dad. He's whatever.
Awful.
The way he wrote Joshua really resonated with me. It reminded me of myself as a kid, and one of the best scares of the year, hands down.
So good.
Imaginary friends, creepy kids, not usually my thing, but I really enjoy Z, and then I'm going to have to really sit with that. And
you still going to have kids?
I think I'm going to have kids. I'm going to start with the dog coming in.
Oh yeah, when do you get him?
July. We lost the May baby, but yeah.
Hold on, you didn't. The baby was fine. We should clarify. You just didn't commit in time to get the dog.
No, they sold it out from under us, and that's fine. They did rip up the check that we sent. That's very cool as well. Stephen McHattie, I love his performances. I don't know about him as a person.
Oh yeah, he's supposed to be horrible.
Really, really interesting tools in this. The toys, much like...
Is that a reference to McHattie?
That's funny. Yeah, I like Z a lot. And for those reasons, I give it 7.5 ceiling fans. And those are our thoughts on Z.
Are ceiling fans really that strong?
Z is available on Shudder right now, streaming. It's a great Mother's Day film.
Oh, yeah, super good.
Perfect timing. So call up your mom, get her on the couch. Well, actually, don't do that. Stay in your house. Still. Come on, guys. But yeah, check out Z right now. Once you have, I want to hear what your thoughts are. You could tweet us at Frightday or Instagram, same thing. Our DMs are open. You could leave a comment below this episode in the show notes at frightday.com, a great place where there's other views of other films and trailers and all kinds of stuff. Written by the writers at frightday.com, or you could send us an email, contact@frightday.com. But as always, let's have a big talk about this film and more Skinwalker Ranch talk in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Frightday. I love that place. Great people. And if you love our show or even like it and want to help us make it even better.
If you don't hate it.
Yeah, that's great.
If you don't hate it.
You can do a couple things. One, shop.frightday.com. Spooky things for spooky people. A great way to darken your day. Pins, shirts, string board starter kits. Those are always fun.
Oh, boy, howdy.
I forgot that I designed a map. That's pretty fun. I pinpointed the location of several interesting situations across the United States. So check that out, shop.frightday.com. And our lips are sealed. For now.
I was going to sing, but I won't.
Please don't. But they keep flapping at patreon.com/Frightday. When you subscribe to Frightday Screamium, when you support us there, you get access to all kinds of stuff. Bonus episodes of Captain Kelly's Cryptids Conspiracies, Byron's Serial Corner. At the Writer's Room, they just recorded an episode. That'll be up soon. Cinema Autopsy, and Behind the Screams. Behind the Screams is our weekly companion to this show, and for the past few weeks, we've been doing something called Blum Madness for... it's a bracket-style competition to get to the bottom of what are the best Blumhouse films, period. And
oh, yeah.
Things are heating up. It's going to be an intense battle of wit and word, and you don't want to miss it. So subscribe now, patreon.com/Frightday. It's Frightday Screamium.
Kelly wins.
It's not about winning, it's about films.
It is. My psychiatrist keeps telling me I need to focus on winning less, but I just can't help it.
All right. Most helpful of all, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcast or Stitcher or wherever you're listening to this. That's the best way to get us up charts and in new ears. Next week, what are we going to do, Kelly?
Lodge?
Do you want to do the Lodge? Lodge is out now on Hulu. I think that would be fun. Maybe we'll skip Blood Quantum. I'll probably watch that on my own and maybe talk about it at the top of the show. That sounds like a good plan. Did we just...
Well, we could watch Blood Quantum the next week. Please don't make me watch Fantasy Island.
I mean... Who knows?
Sweet baby Jesus, please do not make me watch that.
Kelly, until then, where are you going to be?
Oh, I'm inside my house.
That's cool.
Maybe on a walk around the block a couple times.
What about on the internet?
Oh, there. You can email me, kelly@frightday.com. You can find me on Twitter at kellyfrightday. You can try me on Instagram, Captain Kelly Jennifer, or you can mostly send me a really cool true tale of terror because the time is coming round again.
Yeah, we're nearing episode 250. I don't know what kind of special thing we should be doing, but True Tales of Terror might be a fun part of it. I don't know.
I think so. Why not? It's perfect.
Kelly@frightday.com. I'm at Byron McKoy on Twitter and Instagram, Byron@frightday.com. That's my email address.
And until next Frightday.
Oh, yeah. I'm Byron. I'm Byron.
I'm Kelly.
Okay. I'm Byron.
I'm Kelly. Keep staying inside.